Stoltenberg calls on allies to continue supporting Ukraine and be prepared for bad news. The new VOICE of Ukraine. Ukraine urgently needs ongoing support from Western allies, as a victory by Russia, the aggressor would have tragic consequences, NATO Secretary-General Stoltenberg said in an interview with German television. DW reported on deck. Below are your comments. War is always a bad news and nobody wants it. Aggressions need to be stopped, otherwise it will be continued forever. When the aggressors get more stronger, they will do more harms to the neighboring. But Ukraine is winning. The Russian forces are unabatedly crumbling under relentless Ukrainian advances? What is happening? If we should be prepared for bad news, why keep throwing money at the problem? Stoltenberg is the #1 stooge and salesman for U.S. defense industry profits, and this cash cow called Ukraine war was purposely instigated and created or exactly that point. Almost nobody wants to address the root causes of this debacle nor talk about the fact that Zelensky, the warmongers, creep. Stop calling on allies, you can do that yourself, but Germany is trying to get out of the promised billions and started making excuses. So pretty much what he is doing is calling US to keep wasting money on Ukraine, as Germany needs our luxuries like free healthcare, free education, so they don't Next news. Russia attacks Ukraine with 12 Shahed UAVs and 1 missile overnight. Ukrainian air defenses bring down 10 drones. Ukrainska Pravda. Ukrainian air defenses have destroyed 10 out of 12 Russian Shahed attack UAVs launched towards Ukraine on the night of 2–3 December, but failed to bleep down a Russian Kh-59 missile. Source: Ukrainian Air Force details. The Air Force reported that the Russians launched 12 Shahed kamikaze drones from the area of the CITY of Primorsko-Akhtarsk, Russia, and a Kh-59 guided missile from the airspace of Belgorod Oblast, Russia. Below are your comments. Man, what a waste this all is for Russia. All the resources used in this war could have been spent on making Russia better. In fact, if Russia were really concerned about being invaded, they could have beefed up militarily. Instead, all the resources have been wasted. Russia's military has been severed. The main thing from the briefing of the Russian Defense Ministry: the armed forces of Ukraine have lost 4,590 dead and wounded over the past week. During the week, the Air Defense Forces shot down 8 aircraft, 5 MiG-29s, 2 Su-27s, 1 Su-25, and 1 Mi-8 helicopter, as well as intercepted. Russia could break up like it happened to Yugoslavia in 1991 after the war is over. Patriot, F-16 to Ukraine less than to Zelensky wife to NY 5th Avenue, U.S. Next news. Biggest number of Russian attacks repelled on Bakhmut and Avdiivka fronts, General Staff. Ukrainsk. A Pravda. On 3 December 56 combat clashes occurred in the combat zone in Ukraine. Most Russian attacks were repelled on the Bakhmut 16 and Avdiivka 14 fronts. Source. Report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine details. Russia continues waging the war of conquest against Ukraine. Below are your comments. Ukrainian teacher. Come on everyone onto the bus, we are going on our 10th grade field trip to the historic Donbass Street. Udent. Teacher, why is the bus painted green and coach handing out rifles? Things are gonna get more brutal for Russian soldiers. The supply lines are being cut. The Russians are not equipped for the winter because this special limited military operation of Putin was supposed to be over in 3 days. Russia is going to lose a lot of soldiers from frostbite and hypothermia. First of all, it's not the Bakhmut front, it's the Artemovsk front. What can you do in Artemovsk you couldn't do in Bakhmut? Vote, speak Russian, have more than one politica party, worship at a UOC church, freedom of speech, and have a beer without getting drafted. U circa. If Russian soldiers want to survive, they need to surrender. Now. Next news. Thousands of banned dogs living in UK homes. Dog time. Recent government data shows nearly 3,500 banned dog breeds in the United Kingdom are living legally in homes in Scotland, England, and Wales under an exemption scheme, BBC News reports. Currently, there are 4 breeds banned in the UK. As per the Dangerous Dogs Act 1991, Pit Bull Terriers, the Japanese Tosa, the Fila Brasileiro. The post thousands of banned dogs living in UK homes appeared first on Dog Time. Below are your comments. Certain politicians have caused more harm by their presence than virtually any of the dogs could do. But we have no list of them yet banned nor anything much done to stop the actions which they do. Pit bulls should be banned everywhere. Pit bulls have bleep over 100 humans this year so far and maimed hundreds of thousands more, mostly children and elderly. The real question is, why some people adopt this kind of dogs? It's not only a matter of dogs, it's also a matter of people who choose these dogs. How many people have been bleeped this year by cars, knives, bats, strangulation, asphyxiation, kicking or hitting, heaters, drinking, smoking, etc.? Are all these next to be banned? Good video on TubeU called Demystifying the Dog, Episode 13, The Pitbull Problem. Next news. Kirby doesn't know when discussions to resume Israel-Hamas truce will restart. The Hill. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said Sunday that he does not know when discussions to resume a truce between Israel and militant group Hamas will restart after the fighting reignited over the weekend. Well, I wish I knew the answer to that one, Kirby said when NBC's Kristen Welker pressed him on WH. At the Below are your comments. The only discussions to end the fighting should be what will be expected from Hamas after their unconditional surrender. Obviously this would include their disclosing all their weapons production and storage locations, IR tunnels, their members, and realization that many of them will be imprisoned. Kirby. Resume negotiations after Hamas leader have been or captured and held for capital crimes. Wait until there is no Hamas leadership left with which to negotiate. At that point, Hamas will be so devastated that they will never be able to trigger another attack by Israel. They'll resume after American arms companies have sold Israel another multi-billion dollars worth. The U.S. is allowed to support the atrocities with money and weapons, but remain in the dark otherwise. When all of Hamas is dead, then the truce begins. Next news. Commander. Russian infantry activity rising in southeastern frontline. Kyiv Independent. Russian forces have reduced the number of airstrikes against Ukraine but intensified infantry activity. On the southeastern front line, General Alexander Tarnovsky, the commander of the Tavria Group, reported on deck. Below are your comments. Don't expect to hear the real news stories from Kyiv Independent, which is Zelensky cancelling elections in Ukraine, taking away the very last chance for people to have any say in Ukraine, after Zelensky banned all 17 opposition political parties and every single media. The Kyiv Independent and the New Voice of Ukraine are the only sources for all frontline news. Despite Russians dying like flies, a stalemate remains unbroken. One potential explanation for this could be the equally high mortality rate among Ukrainians. General Zaluzhny just got busted negotiating surrender. Will he be tried for treason, or will Zelensky go into exile in Florida? Will Putin pardon Zaluzhny and other top brass? Popcorn peace symbol popcorn. The value this article, a known Ukrainian propaganda source. Ukraine propaganda numbers doesn't measure up to the actual news on the front lines. 440 Russians but lost Myrinka. Next news. Ukraine opens war crimes investigation after video shows Russians surrendering Ukrainians. The New Voice of Ukraine. The Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine announced on deck. 3. The launch of an investigation following the release of a video showing Russian troops TWO Ukrainian soldiers who had surrendered. Below are your comments. Put it on the list. Time to surrender and stop the war. Do it now and keep Odessa, leave it much later and that will come under Russian rule too. Just another useless investigation. Nothing is going to happen to those people. It's sad so many young men are losing their lives on both sides over this senseless war. If Putin is a student of history, then he needs to remember Vietnam War and Soviet-Afghan War. An invader will be doomed against a determined foe who is fighting for their own freedom on their. But it's perfectly okay for the UKs to bleep a man with a drone while he's in a hole taking a nature see all and putting his hands up, and send the video of it all over the world and calling it a funny video. Right, got it. You bombed a music hall with a civilian inside just a few weeks ago. Slobably Povtrdlensky. Next news. A harrowing video shows decomposing babies in a Gaza hospital after they had to be abandoned amid Israeli attacks, say reports. Business Insider. NBC News said it had reviewed raw footage of Gaza's Al Nasser Children's Hospital Pediatric ICU Unit W. Here the abandoned dead babies were found. Below are your comments. So let me get this straight. Hamas starts a war by attacking Israeli civilians, not an army. They live stream their acts. People in Gaza praise the attack. They hold on to hostages, and then demand negotiations, while at the same time embedding their freedom fighters into the civilian population. How easily both people and corporations are manipulated. Hamas is coming on strong with the propaganda. Keep up the good work IDF and level all of Gaza. Hamas has to go. Since they are so deeply embedded in the civilian population, including schools, hospitals, neighbor OODs, the civilian casualties will be high. With a sky-high birth rate and half the population under 18, the number of children bleep will be high. GH2. Based on interviews that I have. Why are the safe tunnels filled with adult males instead of children? Next news. Two sets of innocents overlooked in Israel-Hamas conflict. Springfield News Leader. The most vocal supporters on both sides of the Israel-Hamas conflict share similar blind spots, this writer says. Below are your comments. Obama, so fairly asserted in the early days of his first period at the White House some words to the effect that no Mideast peace would prevail unless the Israelis retreat to the borders of prior to 1967. That assertion of Obama made all of us here in Iran almost dance with the pleasure of hearing Hamas exercises absolute control over Gaza. Where have you been? Don't you know that Israel imposed a siege of Gaza for more than 16 years, controlling all aspects of life in Gaza? Gaza has been described as the largest open-air prison concentration camp in the world. In 2010, the Hamas leadership. It all started when Western democracy leaders displaced Palestinians and insert occupiers to scare crow Muslims. 0.75 years of slaughter by apartheid regime. Now churning baby bleeper Nettie Biden Koru. PT assertion. Thank you for a well-reasoned and what I believe to be the correct view of things. Next news. G5 Sahel. Niger and Burkina Faso leave anti-Islamist force. BBC. Both nations' military juntas say the G5 serves foreign interests and has not made the region safer. Below are your comments. Wow, it took them that long to see the obvious. And how in the world did you believe that nonsense anyway? The actual true terrorists supposedly fighting some made-up ever-eluding terrorism? Is history not enough of a lesson? Hope the rest of Africa wakes up and starts doing some much-needed house-K. Who can argue their rationale is mislaid? The French have never really stopped being Africans' colonial overlords. The French were supposed to protect the Rwandans, and then the Tutsi genocide happened under their very watch. Coincidence? No. Rwandans say the French were directly implicated. YW. Sahel is a waste of time and money. Let them be for the time being. They'll crawl back begging. Why waste time with non-entities and virtually non-existent capabilities that could lead to something better? Well, the French troops are safer. See ya. Everybody get out. The Russians are welcome to stay. Tears of joy. Next news. Russia deploys fresh, well-trained reserves to Bakhmut. The new voice of Ukraine. Russian forces have been significantly reinforced, as fresh, well-trained reserves with have been NT to the Bakhmut sector. Senior Lieutenant Oleksiy Tarasenko, a deputy commander in Ukraine's 5th S. Eparade Assault Brigade told Radio Svoboda on November. Below are your comments. By well-trained meaning they can put on a uniform, know the basics about the weapon they carry and find the mess hall, maybe tell the rank structure enough to know who is giving the orders. Well-trained lol. It takes years to properly train an above-average soldier. 6–12 months of training might teach you the basics, but everything you learned in basic will be a 2 RNADO of information inside your head when under constant fire and stress. What happened to the last group of reserves that the Russians sent to Bakhmut? The rest of the story goes like this. Russia deploys fresh, well-trained troops to the front. They almost made it. 3 nights camping in the woods doesn't make you a well-trained soldier. Next news. Efforts to neutralize enemy air defenses remain critical to war efforts, UK intel says. The new VOIC-E of Ukraine. The efforts of both Russia and Ukraine to overcome each other's ground-based air defense systems remain one of the most important contests of the war, reads an intelligence report by the UK Ministry of Defence published on Dec. Below are your comments. You see a vast improvement by Ukraine over the past year in downing drones and missiles. The Russian air defense systems are not all that, considering 3 out of 10 cruise missiles hit the naval port of Sevastopol. Russia's big advantage is their electronic warfare platforms that have sent thousands of UK, along with other Western democracy leaders, have always involved in wars and bleep as their evil intentions are to harm the world. USA send 100 long-range ATACMS Standard .100 with cluster munitions. Blow up all rails and roads 10 miles from Russian border, then again 25 miles in. 200 long-range HIMARS to lob at repair crews. Next news. Israel-Gaza war, Israeli forces pushing into South Gaza. BBC. The head of Israel's military says the IDF is fighting strongly and thoroughly in southern Gaza. Below are your comments. I do not understand. You mean that 800 tunnel shafts were constructed to a massive underground matrix, and there were no plans to construct bomb shelters for the civilian population or prearranged plan to evacuate women and children to safety for a bombing campaign Hamas has was coming for? Where is the Biden administration's call for Hamas to surrender? Come out of the tunnels, release the hostages, and surrender. Otherwise, Hamas is responsible for all misery endured by the Palestinians due to their refusal to surrender and use of human shields. The public voted Hamas into power. They give aid and support to Hamas. That makes the public an enemy combatant. It's too bad, but it's necessary to attack and dismantle. Next news. Military. More than 5,000 explosive devices removed over past week. Kyiv Independent. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Ukrainian military has removed more than 150,000 explosive devices across Ukraine, including territories liberated from Russian occupation. Below are your comments. Have them put back in deep Russian territory and let them see how it is. Mines should never be wary. However, if you deploy them, then you should fearful of them. All of them can be turned on Russian troops. Put orc POWs to work removing these mines. Good job preparation for making Russia offensive easy. That's a drop in the bucket. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.